Well, welcome into a special edition of Michiana Unsolved. We are taking you upstairs and introducing you to a cold case detective, one of the on the case right now. So I'm happy to introduce you to Craig Whitfield joining us this morning. Craig, this is really exciting because we are talking about a case that you are so passionate about, that I have become so passionate about through talking with you. So after talking about this case, we said, let's hop on here. This case deserves a little bit more chatting to really tell the whole story that can't be told in a minute and a half on air.
Absolutely. This is one of those cases that you look at the victim, and she's actually a classic true victim, innocent victim. She was minding her own business in her own home. And so, so this one, we need to do a lot more with it.
Yeah. So every single week, I normally hop on Facebook Live and talk about Michiana Unsolved, which is obviously something I work very closely with you, Lieutenant Miller with Michiana Crime Stoppers. In addition to jumping on here, we normally do a story that airs. This week, we highlighted Geraldine Reasor, and she's a 64-year-old woman who was killed more than 30 years ago. We are talking, what was it, 34 years ago this month, right? So yes. I'm going to kind of jump on here. Excuse me, I'm going to move this as I play with my tools here a little bit. I want to jump on and show some photos, and I want you to kind of start from the beginning. What was the date of this case? And let's talk location of where this happened.
So this is on May 3rd, 1990. 425 South Scott Street. It's public housing. They're kind of known as the Quad. So this was one of those areas of town that just outside of downtown. She lived there by herself. The intruder was able to make entry into her home via a cut screen. Victim was in bed. Actually, the intruder had cut two screens on three sides to try to get into the home.
Yeah, I think I got a photo of this. I'm giving you kind of perspective of where this is. Here you can see the Scott Street Western Chapin. Over to the left, you can see the South Bend Cubs field right there. So that gives you perspective. And you said this was government housing where she was staying. And these are relatively small homes. I'm going to bring up some more pictures so people really get an idea of what this looks like. And here's that screen that you were talking about, right? So that is a huge piece of this case as well.
Yes. Yeah, so that's one of the two windows that the screen was sliced. Again, the suspect cut three sides, and it's dangling there. Yeah, there's the other photo there. And made entry into the home while we believe she may have been sleeping.
Wow. Yeah, and the home that she was in, we're really getting perspective. And I want to show one more here because, again, you're really getting an idea of what this screen looked like. And these are photos straight from the case, right? So these are in your folder.
Yes.
We did mention this on the Facebook Live. This is very graphic, what we're about to show you. Some people, I actually received an email yesterday kind of saying, I don't know why you would show something like this. Make better choices next time. And I said, I'm sorry, but this right here, again, it's a crime scene photo from inside. It's coming up right now. Yes, it's graphic, but I can't apologize for putting this out here. This shows you really what this woman went through. And this is why right here we are fighting to understand what happened to her.
Sure. So I think a lot of times we get the sanitized version of the news.
Yeah.
And so as police officers, investigators, we get to see the real thing, the real version. And now your viewers are actually getting to see what we saw.
Yeah.
And the victim was, sitting next to the bed, unresponsive, in a dark room when help arrived finally. And but that's what she had been enduring for a period of time before they arrived.
Yeah, I mean, break this down for me just a little bit. When you come in contact, because by the way, I didn't even do a proper introduction, Detective. I apologize. Detective Whitfield worked for homicide for several years. You worked at Memorial, and now you are the cold case detective over at South Bend PD. These are scenes that you have come encounter with a lot. And it's just so important to not sugarcoat something like this, because we're talking about somebody. We're putting you in this position of what this poor woman went through.
Yes, and again, I think we do get the sanitized version on the news, and but this will maybe it will prompt somebody to say, hey, look, we really need to see if we can help this person if they happen to know anything about this case or about the victim. Her life, those people that she's associating with, we'd want that information.
Yeah, it's time to speak up. So again, this all happened on May 3rd, 1990, 400 block of Scott Street. So crews show up, right? Initially, it was an interesting call. This kind of sparked me a little bit. It was a call to assist a fire department. And that's interesting. Mm-hmm. Why would it initially be that? That was kind of weird.
Yeah, so that's actually more common than you realize. Okay. So where the police or the fire department's called because they need an ambulance. So and they didn't know what had happened to her. So once they started figuring it out, it's like, okay, we need to get the police here and begin the investigation because this is an assault.
This is big. And we also, what we touched on in the piece is that we don't even know when this happened. And that's what's really hard about this. Normally we can say, hey, 5:37 police reported to shots fired in this location. This wasn't the case. We're actually not sure how long she was even sitting with these injuries.
Correct. That's true. It could have been several hours.
Wow.
I don't think it was more than, a half a day, but still she was suffering.
Yeah. Yeah.
She had a lot of injuries.
Suffering is in an understatement when you see these photos, that's for sure. Bringing some more back of these crime scenes up a little bit. So she's sitting here next to her bed. We're seeing blood just everywhere. I want to talk about the injuries this woman sustained because, again, I've obviously very little knowledge of scenes like this, of victims like this, but it feels intimate. Like to be beaten so bad, to be raped, it just feels more than I want to steal something from you. Am I off with that?
No, there was almost an anger involved in this, it appears. And but she suffered broken ribs, broken collarbone. I mean, she had so many bruises all over her, and it's very tragic.
Yeah. So officers are called, and they find her, and she is alive. A lot of people, I can't stop talking about this case. I tell them they're shocked to hear that she lived through this. She was alive. She was very incoherent, so there wasn't a lot of information that was able to be taken from her at that moment. Correct. She was rushed to the hospital, and then what happened?
She was taken to the hospital. They figured out that they performed life-saving measure on her for she had lost some blood. They sent her to X-ray and found out she had all kinds of broken bones. And she was admitted to the hospital for, I think it was 10 days. But again, she was unable to really tell the police anything. It was one of those that she couldn't identify the assailant, couldn't tell us if it was race or what happened. So we pick up the pieces and go from here.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about that. This woman, it just kind of screams bravery to me, if you will, because she was able to sustain all of that, was still, again, I want to reiterate, we don't know when this happened. We don't have the exact timetable. We don't know how long she was there. So to be able to go through that, I can't imagine. To be taken to the hospital, be fighting for your life. Ultimately, unfortunately, she did die. And what was it? We believe it was a heart attack brought on by that trauma.
Yes. She suffered an immense amount of trauma. And so I think it was 18 days later, she had been transferred from Memorial Hospital to a nursing home, and she passed away in the nursing home of a heart attack. But the heart attack was brought on by the severe trauma. Her body was trying to heal, and she just couldn't do it.
Yeah. It's horrible. It really is so horrible to try to imagine what she was going through, what she was thinking at that time. So she stayed there at the hospital, spent some time there. Then, as we mentioned, went to the nursing home. and then ultimately passed away from a heart attack. I want to talk a little bit about what was found in her home. We're not going into specifics because what's interesting about these cases, and as the media, right, we beg for more. We want to know every last detail, but you can't divulge all that because ultimately that helps with your investigation.
Correct.
What can you tell us about what was found? Because this assault happened, but ultimately something was taken.
Yeah. So her purse was taken from the home, and it was found 4 or 5 blocks away, north of her the complex where she lived. And then, of course, then on the inside of the residence, we have a lot of clothing that she was wearing and things like that that became evidence. There was a sexual assault kit that we're currently having it reevaluated and reanalyzed by the DNA lab. So there are things that we're doing that will hopefully shed some light on who did this.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about the work that went into us I say us because I feel like I was bugging you so much about this case because initially we had the facts, right? We had the facts, we had the crime scene photos, which we showed you. We didn't have a picture of Geraldine. And I said, Craig, I love you, but how am I going to tell this story without showing her photo? And my biggest thing about that was I didn't want these horrific crime scene photos to be what people remember about Geraldine. I want you to see her photo right here and I want you to look at her when you imagine what she sustained, because I want to get you angry. I want you angry enough that you are saying, we need someone to come forward. We want to do what we can as a community to help this woman. But it was a venture. So talk to me about tracking down a photo, which you texted me at the final hour. We got one.
Yes. So basically what happened was this is one of those cases where it's 34 years old. So she's been gone a long time. If she were alive today, she'd be 99.
Yeah.
And so because of the age of the case and her age at the time that it happened, she was 64. Basically, her parents were already deceased. And then when we go back and look, all of her siblings are deceased. Then we moved on to the a nephew, and he's deceased. And she was unmarried, so she had nobody else. And so we're looking, and I enlisted the help of a couple other detectives, and they were able to find this particular picture. And it was a case where it was a 1947 case, 1947 picture of Geraldine. And that's what we had when I first give it to you.
Yeah. On top of that, I do want to give a shout out, Dr. Todd Cummings, because it was funny. We were kind of chasing each other's tail during this process, wasn't it? We went to her gravesite and asked Palmer's, said, do you have anything? And they had the obituary, but no photo. Right. But in the obituary, we saw the church that she frequented, right? So we called them and said, guys, you got to have a photo, right? Because it seemed like she was an adamant churchgoer. Yep. They couldn't find one, but they knew people who knew her. Right. I talked to someone who said, one of our elders drove her to church every Sunday. So we're getting close, right? Right. And the last thing I thought was, all right, let me try to call South Bend Schools, because at least what we could do is show a younger picture of her, at least something, right? And I got to give a huge shout out to them. She ended up not going to South Bend Schools, what we learned, but Dr. Todd Cummings said, you need it, I got you. We are going to do everything. He put some interns to work. I believe there was a little incentive involved with the Starbucks who could get the photo first. Unfortunately, they didn't find anything. But they got invested in the case. And that's why I really wanted to take this here too, is because if we get so invested, maybe you can too, and ultimately solve this case. And that brings me to what we have learned today. You came in saying, I got more for you. You guys were actually able to track down family members. Actually, hold on, before we go there, I think I have something else for you. You and I were intrigued with this. We saw an old Tribune article. And by the way, I did call Howard Dukes. I said, do you remember this case? I got to talk to you. But before we found the photo and we looked at this piece, it said, no one noticed Reasor missing.
Yeah.
And that sat with us too, because we couldn't find a photo. And then we see this article and we think, no, 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 that is not going to fly here. We knew something's going on. We are going to fight for her. And so we had this theme of who is this woman? But we learned more, and I need you to share this with us because it's really special what you've learned.
So I talked to, I thank you to Summer Dean. She's an officer that helped me with tracking down the photo. So, I met with one of her nieces yesterday, got us some new pictures, and Geraldine she enjoyed to go to bingo. She was proud of her family. She did scrapbooking. And so if a family member ever had their name in the paper or whatever, she would clip it out and put a frame around it, put it in a scrapbook. So it just kind of brought Geraldine, her memory to life a little bit, and to know who we're dealing with.
Yeah, when I went to her gravesite, and we have Brandon, one of our engineers, on standby over here. I sent myself the recent photo of Geraldine. I don't know if you can bring that up in Messenger. Maybe I can send it to you. So I'm going to see if he can work on that without messing everything up over here, because I apologize. I didn't get that loaded in the system. But when I went and I saw her gravestone, and there were flowers on it. And I thought someone's still paying tribute, paying respect. We got to track them down and figure out. And what I just love, it truly makes my heart so happy that when you told me that there are people around here who very much remember her. And that's who we're doing this for.
Yes, absolutely. And I guarantee you they're watching right now, or they're going to watch it on replay.
Yeah.
So, there's people all across the United States, actually. One niece lives in San Diego. And so the word's out that we're working on Geraldine's case.
Yeah.
And I promised them we'd give it a really good effort and see what we can do with it, and we'll take it from there.
You see some really hard things. How do you do that? How do you compartmentalize it? Do you deal with it by going over and beyond on cases like this? How do you do it?
I think most detectives have a tendency to take some of these cases personally.
Yeah.
And especially ones where you have a victim who they're an innocent victim. It wasn't about their choices that caused anything to happen to them. They were like any other person, sleeping in the middle of the night, and someone enters their home and brutally beats them and rapes them.
Yeah.
And so these types of cases, it's like we have to do something. And I think I'm not the only one that feels that way. I would tell you the whole South Bend PD, the Violent Crimes Unit, they all feel exactly as I do. So how I feel is no different than anybody else. But it's what drives us. It's what keeps us moving. It's what that we want to bring that justice to the family and closure to the family. Justice to the victim.
By the way, I do want to bring up here, there's a whole other layer to this fight as well. Geraldine was involved in an accident at a very young age.
Yeah. At age 6, she was running across Cedar Street in South Bend and got struck by a floral van. And she had severe deformity on her face, severe injuries on her face, and you can actually see them in the picture. Yeah. And so, but she was, she'd been through a lot, and then to have, go through life with a disfigurement like that, and then die like this is very, very tragic.
She's a survivor.
Yes, she is.
And she deserves some answers. We have someone standing by, and her name is Karen Lacey, and she is actually our assistant news director here at WNDU. We're going to bring her in. Karen is one of the people that I was talking to about this case, and I said, Karen, we got to do more. Listen to this. You're not going to believe it. Let's talk about it. And she got invested in this as well. So I'm happy, Karen, that you're here with us too. What's going through your mind right now with all this?
Emotional a little bit. I hate to say that, but because you feel the pain, you feel the hurt, you feel like oh my God, who did that?
Right.
Like, that's my sister or something.
Right.
Like, why would you do that or something like
Right.
that? And then it's just so many, like, the more you learn, the more you want to learn more.
Right.
And it's just, I don't know, it's captivating in
Yeah.
a sense, and I hate to say that too.
No,
but
yeah.
it's just like, while you were sleeping, this was happening to her.
Right.
And it's like, what?
Right.
So.
No, I mean, and Craig, I think this is why we do what we do, right?
Yes, absolutely.
How can we get more people to see and get involved? Because when you don't see it, and again, this circles back to bringing these crime photos in. And I am so sorry that I disturbed anybody last night while they were watching the news. I apologize. That is not my intent. But what my intent is to make you say, wow. And I did that because I hope that wow turns into action. And I think the biggest thing when I sit down with Lieutenant Miller every week for Michiana Unsolved is trying to get the idea out there that we do not have to live in a community like this. And in order to say, no, this is not what I'm going to stand for, you have to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I think the pictures tells a lot of the story. It is unfortunate that someone feels like they were offended by it, but they were warned as well. So,
Right.
But I think that just gives you a little bit of a peek on into what is going on in these types of cases, and it does bring that passion, to the officers and the investigators, and to you, and to all of us here. We want to do something for the victim, and I think it's important that we give it our best shot. Things have changed since 1990. So the technology's changed, and the abilities that we have now are different than what they were then. And we're going to not stop until we've uncovered every rock and turned it over and see what we can do with it. And we'll just, hope's not a good strategy, but we will hope for the best too, as well as work hard for Geraldine.
Sorry.
No, good.
No, and another thing that got me too is like, she had a community.
Yeah, she did.
She had multiple communities.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like someone that just stayed in the house. Even after the trauma she went through when she was young, she continued to live her life. Mm-hmm. And that's what, like, just the layers of, like, and I understand, like, with time go by, families pass away and things like that. But it just was interesting that the journey to track down certain things that we need, like a picture or like that trajectory, I guess, of learning more about her, it feeds into like, what?
Yeah.
What next?
Right. No, exactly. And
Yes.
you can see her as your mom, as your sister, as your friend. You can understand this.
Absolutely.
As we kind of conclude here, Craig, really quick, or detective, I apologize.
It's okay.
This is what happens when I know you guys too long as I become informal. I know that there are some new things going on at the South Bend Police when it comes to DNA. I don't want to dive into necessarily that technology just yet, but I do want to talk about this DNA aspect. I say we. I'm very invested. It's not we. I'm not doing any testing. I'm not paid for it. Just kidding. My taxes are. But you guys are already testing. This has already been sent off. You are in the thick of this case right now.
Yes, absolutely. So as I said, we have new tools that we didn't have in 1990. So we're looking to extract some DNA off of some of the evidence that we have. And with that said, today's technology is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
You've heard of touch DNA. There's a lot of ways that we can do this, and we're hopeful that something will come out of it, and we'll get a DNA profile on a suspect and take it from there.
Because you have been in contact with her family and you said that they are aware that you're jumping on here with us talking about this case, I do want to open up the floor to you. What would you like to say to them watching right now as you're in the middle of it?
What I'd like to say is we're on it. We're going to do everything we can do. I understand how you feel about this. I've talked to a lot of victims over the years, victims' families, and it's a passion of everyone at the South Bend Police Department, violent crimes investigators. We all feel the same, and then we're looking to bring closure to the family, but more importantly, justice to Geraldine, and we're going to do everything we can to do that.
I love that. And I want to leave on this note here. If you see something, say something. This case is a little interesting in the sense that it is a cold case, that it's 34 years old. So the hope is that the DNA can really give us the answers here. But if you have any information, no matter how big or how small, Michiana Crime Stoppers provides you that avenue to remain anonymous, to submit a tip 24/7, 365. Whether it's picking up the phone, someone will always answer. Whether it's going online at p3tips.com/203 or downloading the app on your smartphone. And with cases like this, all I can say is if you knew Geraldine, if you saw her, if you remember any tidbit, if you talked to detectives 34 years ago, please call up. Craig, as somebody who is working this case now, how important is it to even hear from those who maybe just say, hey, I knew her routine was always this, or that's all I can give you, or, this is what I told detectives, but I already told them 34 years ago. It's still valuable.
Absolutely. It could be something where someone calls in and say, hey, there's this guy named, whatever his name might be, that used to go to her house and wanted to borrow money or whatever. It could be a lot of different things, but a lot of times just having a first name that we can follow up on could be just a piece that fits, that completes the puzzle. Somebody else may have given us other information, and that final piece gives us the picture. So if you know something, please give us a call, and we'll follow up on it, and we'll bring some justice to Geraldine Reasor.
Detective Craig Whitfield with the South Bend Police Department, now investigating all these cold cases for the South Bend Police. I am so happy that they have finally really dove into these cases now that they have taken over homicides, now that the County Metro Homicide is no longer. Thank you for jumping on here, Karen, as well, our assistant news director here at WNDU. I just appreciate you both taking the time because this has really struck something within me. And I think that on cases like this that can't be summed up in a minute and a half, that have so many different layers, if you're willing, I would love to have you back. I hate putting you on the spot. You can tell me if you agree to it later. But I do just really appreciate you taking the time, giving your perspective. And I think this just really shows how invested you are. So you're going to have to keep us updated when that DNA comes back.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my absolute pleasure. If you guys have any questions, you can, of course, send me an email. Actually, I got some information here. This was pre-baby photo, so give me some credit here. Send me an email, christine.karsten@wnd.com, on Facebook if you have a case that you want us to look into, if you feel like a case deserves more time than this. I hope we do this more often than not. But yeah, again, thank you both so much for joining me this morning. Detective, stay safe out there as you continue on these cases, and we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. I'm Christine Karsten with Michiana Unsolved.